and you just let the knife sort of bounce along. And if you go over a bush, that's okay. It's your bush. You can go over it if you want to. Anything you want to do to it. And as you've seen already, if it doesn't work, shoot, just fix it.
Remember when television didn't need to scream at you to hold your attention? No cliffhangers, just one man, one canvas, some paint, and a world full of happy little trees. That was the joy of painting. 30 minutes of public television that hooked viewers harder than anything HBO could script. For 11 years, Bob Ross turned PBS into accidental therapy for millions of people who desperately needed it but couldn't afford the copay. He made mistakes sound like tiny detours in the road. You know, happy accidents. Today, we're counting down 15 bizarre facts about the joy of painting. But before we get started, hit like and subscribe, and also make sure to hit that hype button underneath the video. It helps YouTube show this video to more retro TV fans just like you. Now let's get into the countdown with number 15. His signature perm was a money-saving mistake he couldn't undo. Who is that guy on the left? Well, that's Bob Ross, and believe it or not, that famous halo of curls that made him instantly recognizable was a total accident. Before The Joy of Painting ever aired, Ross was traveling the country teaching art classes on a shoestring budget. He decided he could save money by skipping regular haircuts. The plan seemed foolproof. Get a perm, let it grow out, save cash. Spend money on more paint supplies instead. The result was an unplanned trademark that would follow him like a very fluffy shadow until the day he died. His natural straight hair vanished, replaced by tight curls that soon became iconic for reasons he never intended.
I want to show you a fantastic little painting that I think will just tickle you to death. So have your canvas set up. We'll be doing a white canvas. I think that you'll really enjoy it.
The problem? He absolutely hated it. Too bad. Once the show took off, that hair became as recognizable as his whisper. Ross knew he was stuck with the hair. Changing his appearance would confuse his entire fanbase and probably tank merchandise sales, which eventually funded his entire operation. So he spent the rest of his life looking like the world's friendliest cloud. Number 14. Someone did the math on Bob Ross's trees. In 2014, Walt Hickey, a data journalist at 538, did something amazing. He analyzed every single Bob Ross painting and discovered patterns Bob himself probably never noticed. He figured out what the world needed in 2014, right between whatever viral challenge was trending that week, was a spreadsheet about nature, and it turns out Bob Ross had habits, strong ones at that.
And there's no secret to this. Anybody can paint. Anybody can paint. All you need is a dream in your heart.
If Bob Ross painted one tree, there was a 93% chance another would show up right beside it. Because as he always said, trees shouldn't be alone. Even his forests had better social lives than most of us. Trees appeared in roughly 91% of his works. Mountains showed up 39% of the time, and clouds, 44%. Lakes, rivers, and oceans, 34, 33, and 9% respectively. I could have sworn I saw more oceans than that though. Anyway, the tiniest hint of human civilization, chimneys, cabins with smoke, anything suggesting people existed, barely show up at 18%.
These trees remind me of my little squirrel. It'd be a good place for him to live. I want to show you my little squirrel one more time. Shoot up.
Ross naturally gravitated toward empty wilderness. No neighbors, no tourists, no homeowners associations complaining about fence height. His world belonged almost entirely to nature, and that consistency wasn't planned. It was just Bob being Bob. Number 13, only one human ever made the cut.
A little bit. Better give him some buns to sit on. There we go. Give him a little foots. Maybe his hand's just rested on his knee.
Across 381 paintings Bob Ross created for the show, he included exactly one human being. One. And even that poor soul was just a silhouette of a cowboy leaning against a tree in Season 3, Episode 10, titled Campfire. One guy, one campfire, infinite loneliness. Bob's landscapes were basically witness protection programs for humanity. Now, Annette Kowalski, his business partner who would later become central to some complicated legal drama, claims she remembers people walking through the woods in other episodes, and she's probably right. Yes, artists like Bob's son Steve occasionally painted people when they appeared on the show, but Bob himself, just that one cowboy. That's it. So why did Bob avoid humans like they owed him money? Simple. Because people complicated things. Ross's quick painting style favored forgiving landscapes over tricky human faces. He openly admitted painting people made him uneasy. Faces were too subjective, too unforgiving for a no mistakes, happy accidents philosophy. Plus, his show was only 30 minutes long.
Okay, I've just tapped in some little things here. Now I've got the liner brush and I'm going through a little bit of black and the colors. I'm going to put in the indication here and there.
You can slap together a happy little tree in 3 brush strokes. A human face? Well, that requires proportion, symmetry, and the constant risk of creating something that looks like it crawled out of a nightmare. And let's be honest, painting eyes that don't look dead inside is genuinely difficult. Bob knew his audience. He wasn't teaching portrait classes at an art academy. He was teaching regular people how to make something beautiful in half an hour. Trees are forgiving. Mountains don't judge. Clouds cooperate. But paint a nose slightly off-center and suddenly Uncle Gary looks like a Picasso reject. Number 12, he was a speed painting machine. 28 minutes is barely enough time to remember where you left your coffee, but Bob Ross could paint an entire landscape in that window, complete with mountains, reflections, trees, and maybe a last-second bravery test tree added just before the closing credits, like he was playing chicken with the production schedule. Each episode of The Joy of Painting ran for roughly 30 minutes.
Well, I'm trying to teach people a form of art that anybody can do. This is art for anyone who's ever wanted to put a dream on canvas.
Within that time, Ross painted a full composition without ever looking stressed, rushed, or like he wanted to throw his palette knife at the nearest producer. His secret? The wet-on-wet technique he learned from Bill Alexander.
I hand over now that almighty brush to almighty man, and that is Bob Ross.
Applying wet paint directly over wet paint without waiting for layers to dry. No drying time meant no waiting around, just constant forward motion. But here's where it gets wild. Ross would travel to the studio in Muncie, Indiana a few times a year for marathon filming sessions. During these trips, he'd knock out 13 episodes in just 2 or 3 days. Whatever happened on camera, stayed on camera, which made him braver than most Hollywood directors with their $200 million budgets and unlimited reshoots. The man was basically an artistic assembly line wrapped in a whisper, churning out content faster than most streaming platforms could schedule it, yet none of it felt mechanical or mass-produced. Number 11, he painted an estimated 30,000 paintings in his lifetime. Here's a stat that'll make your creative output look embarrassing. By his own estimate, Bob Ross reportedly created around 30,000 paintings in his lifetime. That's roughly 1.5 paintings a day for over 3 decades. During the 381 episodes where Bob actually painted, out of the show's 403 total episodes, since guest artists like his son Steve handled some, Ross produced 3 versions of every single painting. One before filming as a reference so he wouldn't accidentally improvise himself into a corner, one live on air while making it look effortless, and one afterward for his instructional books, with every brushstroke meticulously photographed.
We'll have all kind of nice little bushes and stuff just growing around here.
That's 1,143 canvases just for television, not counting the thousands more he created during his Air Force years, including landscapes he painted on gold pans and sold in Alaska, or the art classes and workshops where people paid actual money to watch him paint in person. Ross turned serenity into a full-time career, and 30,000 paintings was the receipt. Number 10, he painted a gray mountain scene for a colorblind fan. When a fan once told Bob Ross he couldn't paint because he was colorblind, Ross didn't hand him sympathy or suggest he try a different hobby. He just said, "Hold my palette knife." In Season 2, Episode 4, aptly titled Shades of Grey, and no, not that Shades of Grey, this one's actually appropriate for all ages, Ross painted an entire mountain landscape using nothing but black, white, and blended grays. No color, no excuses, no corporate sponsorship from Crayola required.
This is a fantastic painting because it uses only gray and white. I'd like to show you a variation of this.
In 30 minutes, he proved that limitations are mostly made up by people who quit too early. Gray became the happiest color on television, and Ross did it all while whispering softer than your therapist during a breakthrough session. Number 9, he raised injured animals as a kid. Before Bob Ross became television's gentlest art teacher, he was basically Florida's unofficial wildlife rehab center, which, if you know anything about Florida, means he was probably one of the more normal people living there. As a kid, Ross nursed injured wildlife back to health. The animals ranged from anything like squirrels to an alligator, whatever wounded creature stumbled into his orbit. He even once raised a baby alligator in his family's bathtub, which is either the sweetest thing you've ever heard or the most alarming use of indoor plumbing you can imagine. That childhood compassion carried straight into the joy of painting. Viewers occasionally met his favorite rescue, Peapod the squirrel, who would pop up every now and then like a fuzzy co-host who hadn't signed a contract.
Hi, welcome back. Glad you could join us today. Today I have one of my little friends here. You know, I've got several letters since I've shown these in the previous shows asking how in the world you go about feeding a little squirrel.
Once Peapod grew up, Ross released her back into the wild near his home, then immediately rescued another squirrel and named it Peapod Jr., because even Bob Ross understood the power of a sequel. A baby great horned owl named Hoot also showed up from time to time. Yes, an owl literally named Hoot.
Hi, welcome back. Certainly glad you could join me today. I brought my little friend Hoot on one more time so you could see him. We've got so many cards and people have called asking about him. I just wanted to show him again. He's a little baby owl.
In his later years, Ross and his wife turned their Florida property into a small sanctuary for injured birds and squirrels. They'd nurse them back to health and release them without fanfare. Ross's backyard was basically a Disney movie without the singing teacups. Number 8. You can actually burn his face onto your morning toast. Somewhere, as you're watching this right now, someone is waking up, popping bread into a toaster, and greeting the day with Bob Ross's smiling face seared directly onto their breakfast. For $40, fans can buy an officially licensed Bob Ross toaster from Uncanny Brands. You heard me right, a standard 2-slice toaster blessed by the spirit of public television's calmest man. The custom heating plate imprints Ross's unmistakable halo of curls, beard, and mustache right onto your sourdough, whole wheat, or whatever artisanal bread you're pretending makes you look sophisticated. The exterior? Covered in bright images of happy little trees and clouds because your kitchen appliances should absolutely double as motivational art. The toaster is available at Amazon, Walmart, and the manufacturer's own website, and hey, you might as well pick up a Bob Ross Chia Pet while you're shopping for mementos. We'll never know how he would have felt about having his face gently scorched into carbs every morning, though, knowing Bob, he'd probably just be happy people were thinking about him before their first cup of coffee. Quick pause. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe and hype the video. It's easier than fixing a happy little accident. Now let's get back to the countdown with number 7. His paintings are worth surprisingly little and a lot. Now here's the weird economics of Bob Ross. His paintings are simultaneously everywhere and nowhere at the same time. 30,000 of them exist, but good luck buying one. And if you do find one, it might cost you $5,000 or $5 million depending on the day. Most of his on-air originals are owned by Bob Ross Inc. and stored in cardboard boxes at the company's headquarters in Herndon, Virginia. Cardboard boxes. Like they're storing old tax returns, not cultural artifacts. Ross himself never sold his work. He genuinely believed the joy was in creating, not collecting.
We would really like to hear from you and know what type of paintings that you would like to see in the future. So drop us a line in care of WIPB, Muncie, Indiana.
So he gave paintings to PBS stations during pledge drives, where they'd get auctioned off to keep public television running. Those paintings scattered through fundraisers over the years, and most of their locations are now a mystery. Someone out there bought a Bob Ross original for $200 at a charity auction in 1987 and have no idea that they're sitting on a gold mine. Then the nostalgia wave hit, harder than a fan brush loaded with titanium white. Recent auctions, paintings are selling for over $100,000, blowing past estimates. In October of 2025, 30 of his works were auctioned to support public television, full circle back to the PBS stations he donated to decades earlier. And one of his earliest PBS paintings, A Walk in the Woods from Season 1, was listed for $9.85 million. Not bad for a guy who gave most of his work away for free. Number 6. Bob Ross never got paid a single dime for the joy of painting. Now here's a PBS plot twist. Bob Ross didn't make a single cent directly from the joy of painting. Zero. Nada. Nothing. He told the Orlando Sentinel in a 1990 interview, "This is PBS. All these shows are done for free." Which sounds like exploitation until you realize the calmest man on television was also the smartest marketer in the room. The show was basically a 400-episode infomercial disguised as wholesome public television.
Where we bring on guest artists from all over the country and let them show you a multitude of different effects that you can try, that you can enjoy, that do good things to your heart.
Genius! His fortune came from what the show sold. painting supplies, instructional books, and certified instructor courses. Thousands of people paid to learn to teach his technique, which is brilliant when you think about it. He franchised painting. You couldn't just teach the Bob Ross method, you had to pay for certification, buy his branded supplies, and follow his system. So while PBS paid nothing, Ross turned accessibility into an empire. It's the rare case where the do-it-for-exposure deal actually worked. The man literally built a business empire on happy accidents and never raised his voice once doing it. Number 5, Bill Alexander accused Ross of betrayal. Now, every feel-good story needs a villain, and for Bob Ross, that came from the most unexpected place. His former mentor, Bill Alexander, the man who taught him the wet-on-wet technique and apparently expected lifelong gratitude in return. Alexander had his own PBS show, The Magic of Oil Painting, before Ross showed up with quieter tones, fluffier hair, and a fanbase that made Alexander's audience look like a small book club. As Ross's fame skyrocketed, Alexander reportedly grew increasingly bitter. Not a great look, but very human. In a 1991 interview that aged about as well as milk left in a hot car on the sun, Alexander said about Ross, quote, "He betrayed me. I invented wet on wet. I trained him and he is copying me. What bothers me is not just that he betrayed me, but that he thinks he can do it better." End quote.
I made you. I did.
He basically said, but by that point, Ross wouldn't even say Alexander's name on air. He referred to him only as our major competitor, which is the polite PBS version of workplace beef and probably the closest Bob Ross ever came to talking trash about literally anyone. Now, here's the thing. Early on, Ross even thanked Alexander on air, saying he'd given him a precious gift.
Thank you very much, Bill. We look forward to seeing you right here on this channel for the joy of painting.
But fame ruined their relationship. Television tends to do that. The irony that makes this whole feud even messier, wet-on-wet painting dates back to the 15th century. Alexander didn't even invent it, he just modernized it for television, which meant accusing Ross of stealing a technique that's been around for 500 years was like getting mad that someone else was also using the wheel. In the end, one man became a legend whose face appears on toasters, the other became a footnote in art history. Number 4, Deadpool parodied Bob Ross. In 2017, the internet gave us something absolutely nobody saw coming. Deadpool painting happy little trees while wearing a curly wig over his red suit and making it work. The first teaser for Deadpool 2, brilliantly titled Wet on Wet, featured Ryan Reynolds lovingly mocking the joy of painting. Reynolds mimicked Ross's soothing tone with disturbing accuracy and slipped in a few jokes.
Whack that off real good. Just beat it like it owes you money.
Now, he did all of that before cutting abruptly to scenes of chaotic gunfire, explosions, and R-rated violence that would have given PBS executives heart palpitations. The video immediately went viral. It racked up millions of views in days, and turns out even in 2017, when everything was louder, faster, and more explodey, Bob Ross's brand of calm still owned pop culture. Number 3, his voice was the ultimate sleep aid. Decades after the joy of painting ended, Bob Ross officially became what fans always suspected, the human version of melatonin, except without the groggy morning side effects. In 2018, the meditation app Calm, which charges people actual money to listen to soothing sounds and feel less anxious about existence, licensed Ross's voice for a sleep story called Painting with Bob Ross.
Hello, I'm Bob Ross, and I'd like to welcome you to Series 31 of The Joy of Painting. If this is your first time with us, allow me to extend a personal invitation for you to drag out your paints and your brushes and paint along with us each show. And if you've been with us before, please allow me to thank you.
They took audio from his classic episodes and repackaged it specifically to knock people out. Gentle whispers, brush taps, happy little trees, all the hits. Here's the thing. Ross used to get letters from viewers confessing that they'd fall asleep to his show. They worried he'd be offended, but his response? He told the Orlando Sentinel in 1990, "We've gotten letters from people who say they sleep better when the show was on." According to Joan Kowalski of Bob Ross Inc., he loved hearing this. The man genuinely didn't have an ego about anything, which in entertainment was basically a superpower. Today, millions of people fall asleep to the same whisper that once taught them how to paint landscapes they'll never actually attempt. It was ASMR before ASMR had a name. Number 2, he was a screaming drill sergeant before becoming the calmest man on television. Before Bob Ross became the human lullaby lulling insomniacs to sleep worldwide, He was waking up soldiers at 5 a.m. and probably ruining their entire day in the process. As a U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant stationed in Alaska, Ross spent 20 years enforcing military discipline with all the subtlety of a foghorn in a library. He even described himself as the guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who yells at you for being late to formation. Basically, he was the person every recruit dreaded seeing first thing in the morning. His nickname? Bust 'em Up Bobby, which sounds like a mob enforcer, but was actually just Bob Ross making sure you understood the proper way to make a bed. Here's the irony. While he hated the yelling and the authority, Alaska gave him something else. Endless mountain landscapes that would become his signature subject for the next 30 years.
I covered up all my beautiful mountain there. I got talking and carrying on, and we turned this into a forest. Tell you what, since we're going so crazy, let's have another one.
The military job he despised handed him his entire artistic identity. Talk about a silver lining. After 2 decades of shouting orders and watching young recruits flinch every time he opened his mouth, he'd had enough. When he retired in 1981, he made a promise to himself that would change television history. He would never raise his voice again. And unlike most promises people make to themselves, he actually kept it. That vow birthed the version of Bob Ross the world knows. The man who could lower your blood pressure faster than prescription medication. Number 1, the show went global, broke Twitch, and came back from the dead. The Joy of Painting didn't just air quietly on PBS and fade away after Bob Ross's death in 1995. It went global. From Mexico to Japan, Germany to South Korea, Ross became a one-man ambassador for calm in a world that desperately needed it. His soothing voice was translated into multiple languages, though honestly, the message never needed translation. Peace, patience, happy little trees, and the radical belief that mistakes aren't failures, they're just opportunities wearing disguises.
There is to make a little palm tree. Hope you've enjoyed this little tropical sunset type scene, and I look forward to painting with you again. Until then, happy painting and God bless.
Then came the digital resurrection that proved nostalgia can outperform any algorithm. In 2015, Twitch, the live streaming site mostly known for gamers yelling at screens, celebrated what would have been Bob Ross's 73rd birthday by streaming all 403 episodes of The Joy of Painting back to back. 9 straight days, 1 gentle voice, 0 rage quits. The result was beautiful chaos. Over 5.6 million viewers tuned in, with up to 183,000 watching simultaneously. The Twitch chat flooded with happy little trees, thanks Bob, and more wholesome energy than the internet knew how to handle. The marathon was such a hit that Twitch made Bob a permanent fixture, launching Bob Ross Mondays and annual birthday marathons, even donating a portion of proceeds to St. Jude Children's Hospital and Root Division, a non-profit supporting visual artists. That could have been the perfect ending, but in true Ross fashion, there was still one more happy little surprise. In 2024, PBS and American Public Television premiered a new series, Bob Ross Unfinished Season, The Joy of Painting with Nicholas Hankins. It was based on 7 unfinished landscapes Bob Ross had prepared for what would have been his 32nd season before he passed away. For nearly 3 decades, those canvases sat in storage, until Nicholas Hankins, a certified Ross instructor, vice president of Bob Ross Inc. and lifelong fan, was chosen to finish what Bob started.
Hi, welcome back to the painting studio. I'm Nicholas Hankins and I'm a certified Bob Ross instructor, and it's my pleasure to demonstrate for you today some fun with the Bob Ross wet-on-wet painting technique.
Hankins recreated Ross's final works stroke for stroke, using the exact same wet-on-wet technique and half-hour format that defined the original show. He didn't imitate Ross. He honored him with a calm, natural delivery that felt like a continuation instead of a copy. And the story doesn't end there. As of late 2024, filming wrapped on a 2nd season titled simply The Joy of Painting with Nicholas Hankins, marking what fans are calling Series 33. New episodes continue to air on local PBS stations and stream on the PBS app and website, inviting a new generation to turn off the world for half an hour and just paint. And even now, nearly 30 years later, Bob Ross is still teaching the world how to breathe. And there you have it, 15 weird and wild facts about the joy of painting. Which fact hit you the hardest? Sound off in the comments section below, and if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hype it up. And until next time, remember, this is Remember When.